In this video, we're going to take some fixed curriculum and turn it into an experiential learning environment. I'm going to walk you through all the steps of considering who the stakeholders are to the event, what their ideal outcomes are, and what conversations we need to have the best kind of adult learning experience. My name is Josh Friberg, and I work elevating events, whether it be conferences or retreats, or in this case, a full-day workshop. I look at taking those events and shifting the learning from passive to active, moving the expertise off the stage with the subject matter experts and out into the audience, and ultimately inviting people to go from being an individual to being part of a community. Today, I'm going to walk you through a real workshop that I'm going to be guiding in a few days that is based off of some fixed curriculum. And what I mean by that is quite literally, the real estate brokerage has hired me to come in and model a teaching off of a curriculum that already exists. It's like a 140-page manual, instructor manual. It is a 60-page or 60 slide deck, and it's a lot of content. And so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to literally walk you through my process in real time of how I think about an event like this and how I shift it from really passive learning. And by the way, I've been teaching this curriculum for about 8 years, so I know it pretty well. And even when I try to do it as close as I can to the content writer's intent, it still ends up being about 80% or more lecture just because of the volume and density of content. And I've really become persuaded that adults don't learn through passive consumption. Instead, adults learn best when they are engaged in the conversation, when they get to be both teacher and learner, and when there's a healthy cycle of both giving and receiving. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I think about this event, and then it's going to be several videos, but ultimately we'll show you what the finished product looks like when I present this to the real estate brokerage in Yakima, Washington next week, or in a couple weeks. So first off, the thing that I think about is just sort of the general context of this business that I'm going to go be facilitating at, as well as just the context of how people learn, right? Of how people learn. Now, what this is going to be a room of independent contractor real estate agents, right? These are people who have to sell in order to earn an income. They are 1099 independent contractors. And so they are there by choice. They're there voluntarily. They're not employees who are required to go. Instead, they are people who've chosen to be at this event on the promise that at the end of the event, they will have a business plan, a short, simple to understand business plan that they can use for their real estate business in 2025. However, they're probably still stuck in a way of learning or a way of thinking about learning that is, I'm going to go to a class, right? That I'm going to go and I'm going to sit and it's going to be rows of people and I'm going to get talked at and get a bunch of information into my brain head, and that's what's going to change me, right? But the challenge is, and what we've learned is that more information doesn't change people, right? What happens is we already kind of are formed as humans, and when we add more information in, most people will tend to twist it or distort it to fit the mental model that they already have. But actually, in fact, conversation is the thing that kind of comes underneath our formation and allows us to get into transformation. And when we're talking about a business plan, what we're asking people to do is to do something different in 2025 than they did in 2024. Right? We're asking them because the market's changed, because they've changed. We're asking them to do different behaviors. So in order to do that, we've got to move away from a model of dousing people with a fire hose of information and content, and instead cultivating conversations where learners self-discover the information that they need, the choices they need to make, and the decisions they need to make to actually get into action. The other thing is, and I've been teaching this format for about 8 years or so, is I've always found that people leave with a bunch of homework, that they leave not having completed their business planning clinic. And I've not only taught this, but I've been taught this class, this workshop, and people leave without a business plan. And most don't ever finish it. Most don't ever actually complete the business plan so that they can implement it. So how are we going to do that? Well, the first thing we need to do, and this is really part of the proven process that I use for shifting events from being content heavy to being experience heavy, right? To being experiential learning. The first thing I do is I consider the stakeholders to the event. I consider the stakeholders. So let's consider who is a stakeholder for this event, which is a real estate brokerage in Central Washington. It's going to be a room full of independent contractor real estate agents. And the first stakeholder that most of us need to think about is actually not the sort of audience or participants, right? I'm actually going to put them second. The participants are not the first group we need to think about. The first group we need to think about are the people who actually engaged us, right? For me, it's the person who, or the people who hired me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this the market center, right? The market center leadership. And there's a lot of reasons that we want to consider them first, not least of which is, right, that they hired me, but also that they're the ones who maybe are able to provide referrals. They're the ones who are able to follow up on the workshop to make sure to see that this is actually implemented well. Also, these are folks that are going to be able to provide like referrals and feedback to say, did this work? And they're going to be providing the ongoing leadership for the participants that are there. Well, what's important to them, right? First and foremost, and we need to, as facilitators, as people who are designing learning events like this, we got to remember this. They're concerned about profit, right? They're concerned on a return on their investment. And so I understand really well actually how this business makes its profit and how it gets return on its investment, which is why our outcomes and goals for the participants is going to be so important. But that really is the two of their first most important outcomes or goals is, can they draw a line between this session that they're spending time, money, and energy to create, to design, to host? Is that going to turn into revenue for them? Right? Pretty obvious. The other thing is that they are building a culture. They are building a culture within their office, right? Because they have a business of independent contractors, people who are there at will, who could leave any day, by the way, in a very competitive industry. Do they have a culture where people truly feel like they have a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose that they're cultivating? And so will this event help cultivate that culture? Will it increase the amount of connection and community that people have? So this is our second layer. So this is the first sort of outcomes we want for the market center leadership. The second part of this is the participants. So the second stakeholder that we want to consider is the participants. Now, here's the thing for the participants, right? The number one most important thing that they want as an outcome, it's the promise that was made when they come to this workshop, is they are going to leave with a finished business plan. A finished business plan. And I think in the promo video, I said that it would be really simple for them to understand, right? That it would be, and that they would leave without homework. So I absolutely have to follow through on that promise. The other thing is that real estate agents, by and large, want to have a lot of fun and they want to be with their people. They want to be with their people. And so this is actually connected to this culture is, do they have a sense that they belong here, right? That they have a sense of belonging. This is going to mean that we need to really be really thoughtful about creating psychological safety, that we're creating a place where all voices are heard, where people are really valued highly. And then in particular, we're going to be talking about business planning. So there's a fair bit of math in it. And a lot of, let's just be honest, right? A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of adults are a little bit insecure about math. And so how can we make sure that we create a place where it's really safe to do the math that's required to create a pro forma for a 12-month business plan, right? And this is all related around this sense of belonging. And so how do we make sure that it's a safe place, that there's not shame or embarrassment around the math, that we don't do it too quickly? This is one that I always have to be very careful with, because math's always been really intuitive for me. And so I can do a lot of math in my head, and I can do it really fast. And so this is going to be critical that we slow down so that people can do it and understand it. And then I'm also going to create some sort of cheat codes and workarounds for this. Who else is a key stakeholder in the room? Another key stakeholder in our room is going to be the sponsors, right? There's actually some people who are paying money to be at the event. Why? Because these participants are their best customers, right? They want to build relationships, right, with customers, right? Customers or clients, depending on how they describe it. They're probably looking for some sort of like reputational increase, right? So they're looking to kind of be known as professional, as trustworthy. And we're going to create this actually really clever way using third-party endorsements. A lot of sponsors are invited into events like this to get up and do a commercial. What I've found is way more powerful is when our participants give third-party endorsements to these sponsors. And so we're going to help them with that. And then the third thing is related to our market center. Always notice this. Whenever somebody's paying money, ask why, right? And almost always in a business setting, it's because they're looking for a return on their investment. Now, even outside of business settings, this is true, right? If somebody comes to a workshop you're putting in on gardening, right? They want a return on their investment of, I'm a better gardener after having paid to be here, right? Whatever that is. So, but notice where those things show up. And then here's another stakeholder that a lot of meeting designers, agenda designers, and facilitators don't consider. A lot of transaction or transformational MCs like myself is me, right? What's in it for me, such as it is. And I'll tell you a couple things that I'm on the lookout for, right? So one would be referrals, right, from the market center leadership to other people who could hire me, or maybe from the participants. The other thing is that typically events like this do lead into coaching clients for me. And so I want to make sure I do that well, and that I make sure that folks know that that's available. And if they like the way that I guide this, they may like the way that I guide my coaching as well. And so those are going to be a couple of, and then testimonials, right? Making sure that at the end, I have some great video of people saying, hey, I went to the class, really enjoyed it. So these are the key stakeholders when we're shifting an event from a fixed curriculum, right, into an experiential learning. The actual first place we have to start is our broader context. What do we think about learning? We think adult learning happens best through conversation and through interaction collaboration, then through passive listening. Second, we need to consider who our key stakeholders are and what the ideal outcomes are for those stakeholders. Hey, check out our next video where we're going to go a little deeper and a little bit more into the mechanics of designing the agenda now that we've identified what our context is and who our key stakeholders are for this experiential learning workshop.